Hello and welcome to Agents of Nonprofit. My name is Alexander Lapa, and I'm here to speak with everyday superheroes helping nonprofits. Joining me today is Paul Morris to talk about nonprofit technology. Paul, welcome to the show.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to join you today and talk about nonprofits and technology, which I never thought I'd be doing.
Well, these two topics are the major intersections of my life, so I'm excited as well. But before we get into it, let's talk about your superhero origin story. That is to say, how did you get started working with nonprofits in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question, and no one has ever put it to me as a superhero origin story. So I appreciate that. The short version is that I could not get hired cleaning swimming pools for a summer while I was still going. I was staying in the city that my university was in, and I needed a job. And I took a job as a work study student with a nonprofit, an HIV/AIDS service organization in their development department. And I'm using quotes around that because it was a development director and a work study student. And that was the whole department. So it wasn't like a staff of like 5 or 10 or anything like that. And I discovered within about 3 weeks of starting that job, I discovered that working in the nonprofit space, and more particularly working in nonprofit fund development, was what I was actually meant to do. It was like something happened, and I came into work one day, and suddenly I was like, this is it. This is what I need to be doing. And that was more than, it's a little over 30 years ago now. And I honestly could not imagine doing anything else. For 28 years, I worked in staff level development. So working at the local level, the state level, the national level. And a little over 2 years ago now, I decided to take a bet on myself and go out on my own and consult full time. And I feel very, very fortunate to have been able to do that because I get to help and work. I get to work with so many incredible organizations doing very, very vital work. I have a number of consulting interests, but the one that is most focused on technology and something that I never thought, like I said, I never thought would happen. I lead the executive fundraising coaching team at Auxilia, which is a CRM platform. It's actually an all-in-one platform. And we offer one-to-one tailored coaching for our clients. And I lead a team of 5 in that endeavor.
Oh, I'm curious to know because that jump to freelance has always been a scary move, at least for a lot of people. I'm curious to know how is that transition for you from 28 years ish from something more secure to, all right, freelance, let's go on our own and find something that's a bit more risky, but maybe more rewarding?
That is a great way to put it. It took me years to get to a place just mentally where I could take that leap, right? And even to this day, even though I love what I'm doing, I love the variety, I love working with organizations all over the country, having so much flexibility in how I approach the work and flexibility in the relationships that I've been able to develop. It's still scary. I just got to a place in my life where I needed that if I wasn't going to bet on myself and have confidence in myself as a professional, then I would not have been able, right? I wasn't ever going to do it. So even though it was scary, I decided to, I wouldn't say be brave. I think that overstates it, but I was willing to take the risk with confidence and be confident that based on my body of work, on my experience, on the networks that I've been able to create, that I would be able to engage in enough work, enough projects to make it worthwhile. A lot of the organizations that I work with are just out of startup phase, but they're small to maybe early mid-size. They may not have a development person on staff. Maybe they can't afford it. They're not big enough, whatever. So being able to come in to coach them through how to build scalable and sustainable development program really can take them from point A to point B given the resources that they have. That is incredibly meaningful to me, and it's fun. It's a load of fun. I mean, I could not be happier doing this.
Yeah, without getting too woo woo myself, I agree that when you find your purpose and all of a sudden the universe aligns to that, like it supports you and it shows you the way kind of thing. And there's a really weird
Yes.
experience if you've never had it before. I've experienced it a couple of times and it's just like everything's in alignment, everything is telling you to go in this direction. And it's just you're following the current of the stream, so to speak. And it just everything just kind of works. Even starting this topic is a bit challenging because technology is such a widespread topic at this point. So I'm curious, maybe I'll start it this way. I believe, from my experience at least, I've seen nonprofits sometimes are a bit hesitant about technology, that there is a concern about spending either too much or not enough, or how to do it, where to do it. And I'm curious to know your perspective on, why are nonprofits afraid to invest in certain technologies or technologies in general? And just to lead that question or lead that answer, is it like because it's something that just they're unfamiliar with, they need more guidance? What is that fear? Where does that fear come from? And or maybe I should start by saying, do you agree in that there is some kind of fear, as uncertainty maybe better than fear? And if so, how can they address and tackle that fear?
Yeah, I do agree with that. Now, I will say I don't consider myself a technologist, right? I don't have an expertise or a background in technology. My background is, would be, I suppose, from the user end of this question. But I've seen plenty, and over the last couple of years in my work with Auxilia especially, I've I have seen that fear. And because you're right, it is a fear. And I think that fear, is all that you described. That kind of goes into it, and it, boils together in this pot. I think that it starts, from my perspective, I think it starts with with mindset. And for too long, too often, nonprofits have operated in, what is commonly known as a scarcity mindset. And this is really true. That, nonprofit leaders, they act as though there's never enough, right? And like they're in this sort of weird alternate Dickensian world where they can only ask for or take the scraps, right, off the table. And so this scarcity mindset becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so, there's never enough, so we can't move forward. There's no, so and that means we can't possibly invest in technology, whether that's new computers or a CRM or a case management, program, or social scheduling software, whatever it is. There is this fear, I think, driven by a scarcity mindset. So they're not going to make any investment. And but I think that fear, while the scarcity mindset is very real, I think it's also a fear of looking dumb because they don't know how to use a technology that they've not ever experienced, and they don't want to look like they don't know what they're doing, or their leaders and board members they're afraid of change. That, oh well, they're going to have to do something different than what they've become comfortable doing, and that can certainly spark a great deal of fear. Someone has to be willing to say, yes, change is scary, but we need to make this change to be able to grow, to be able to continue serving our community, doing our work. And even though it's scary right now, we can do it because we've been cautious, we've done our research, we have found a good partner, and we can make this investment in ourselves, in our future, because if we don't, we will stay where we are at, and that does not serve our mission or our vision in any effective way.
So it sounds like they need to. So there's 3 points that you mentioned. I'm picking on the third one. It sounds like if you don't invest in the future, you're going to be left behind, so to speak. Like there's a fear of the future at the same time, like because we're comfortable now, we understand how things work now. But if the nonprofit stays in that space and they don't adapt, they don't evolve into the future, then I mean, at a certain point, things might become stale. And how would they be able to overcome this kind of fear? Like, is it informing them, letting them know how important it is to stay current, and current by putting also in quotes, because that doesn't mean, bleeding edge necessarily, but at least somewhat current, versus staying with what we have, what we know, and hanging on to that for as long as we possibly can. There must be some way to help them see the need for continual investment in technology. I want to know if you have any perspective on that.
Yes, that's exactly what people need to do. And that is why being an experienced partner is so important, because I think that sometimes, people need someone to come in and say, I have been where you're at, so I understand the fear, the concerns, the resistance, but it's okay. And this is how we're going to get there together, because this is the way that you will continue to scale and grow. What I have never understood is that nonprofits seem to believe that they have to do more with less, right? Whether it's staff resources or technology resources or financial resources, that there's some nobility in doing more with less. And I think that is ridiculous. I'm not saying, spend hundreds of millions of dollars on investments in technology, but for God's sake, don't use 10-year-old computers, right? Don't use an Excel or Google spreadsheet to track your donations or your communications or engagements and expect, and think that you're going to be able to grow long term. And someone at some point has to say, we are at a point where if we do not invest in ourselves, in our work, we will not grow in the way that we want to. Now that isn't right. There's no guarantee, but why not give yourselves the tools, all of the tools possible to affect growth, to be able to get to that next step. And inevitably what happens is that those organizations either stay where they are at, never growing, or they decline. They burn through leadership, they burn through staff if they have it, they burn through resources. And if they had just been willing to take a moment, this is what we want to do, and here is a partner who can help us do it. Let's, take a deep breath and take that step. The outcomes would be very different.
And the way it was expressed to me is that you should always, or try to at least, make technology choices for what you believe you will look like in 5 years from now, not where you are today, to help you with that growth mindset. So if you think you need, a CRM that can handle this many people, imagine what, or visualize what your organization is going to look like in 5 years, and make sure your choice will still fit that model. Like to your point of the, Google Sheet, and it actually might be okay to start with that if you're really, really new as a nonprofit, but obviously that won't scale at all. And the first choice you should make along those lines doesn't necessarily need to be the full Cadillac version of a CRM, but at least it needs to be able to manage what your operations and your programs and your services will look like in 5 years. So I like that kind of future forward looking mindset instead of just saying, what do we need for today to support our stuff today?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why when I was approached to do work with Auxilia, that's why I said yes, because I could see looking ahead, right, the vision that they shared with me, I could see that, and I could see how this could really be helping and supporting nonprofits grow in a very logical, methodical way, where it's not where it becomes where growth becomes more proactive rather than reactive, where organizations would have a lot more control over how they would grow, because they're not because by using an all-in-one solution, an all-in-one platform, it allows them to not have to constantly be seeking out, a new email program, a new social scheduler, a new CRM. Like, they can really look ahead, as you said, they can look ahead 5 years and know that they have a product. And then, from a coaching perspective, the support around that, right? Because the product's not going to do the work. The product, right? Any platform is merely a tool that you can deploy to in the work that you're doing, right? Otherwise, it just sits there. So the coaching that we do is really in those things around that platform that allows that tool to be used toward that growth.
We've used the word investment a couple of times in this conversation when talking about technology. I think a lot of organizations would classify tech as an expense, not as an investment. And I'm curious to know your perspective on the difference between the two and why they should see it and how they can see it as an investment, not as an expense.
Yeah, well, I mean, from an accounting perspective, for all the accountants out there, yes, it's clearly, obviously, an expense. But I look at technology as an investment because it goes back to what we've just been talking about. Technology is a tool that I can use to do the work better, more efficiently, more effectively. If I am in charge of an organization, right? If I am responsible or in charge of an organization's growth, I want all of the tools that I will need to make that happen. For some organizations, many organizations, they may lack the resources to make the investments that they want to make. But I think that there are economies of scale. They can scale that down and still they can make investments that are comfortable, because those investments, by and large, I believe, based on my experience, those investments will pay off. Being a nonprofit, that is merely a tax status. It's not a way of living, right? It's not a way of operating. Being willing to shift one's mindset toward looking at technology, staff, whatever, as an investment in not only in the future, but also in your present, I think is a much proactive approach, and it gives an organization a lot more control over its own destiny. If everything is just, if things like that are merely looked at as expenses, as a drain on an organization's resources, the likelihood that they will be able to break out of that scarcity mindset of that, oh, we have to do so much more with so much less, the likelihood that they break out of that, I think, is much, much less. And that is, I think, to the detriment of that organization's mission. It is to the detriment of the community that organization serves, and it is to the detriment of the overall fabric of the nonprofit space.
I do like the idea and the concept and I want to underline, in fact, that the designation, the difference between a nonprofit and a for-profit is really a tax designation. It doesn't mean they have to operate fundamentally differently. And that, I think, is such an important comment that I wanted to underline, because unfortunately, too many nonprofits do operate under that scarcity mindset, that they have to do more with less, that they can't do the same kinds of things that for-profit companies can because they have a different outcome in mind. But that's totally not true. I mean, yes, they do have a different outcome, but they can operate in the same capacity. They can be just as efficient, just as lean, just as investing, or they can just invest in the same amount as a for-profit company, and that's okay. So I really wanted to make sure that was clear, and that was a really great comment you made.
Yeah, oh gosh, Alex, I cannot tell you how many board members have said to me, we need to operate more as a business. And I would look at them kind of dumbfounded and say, and I would have to find a very firm but uplifting and respectful way to say, how are we not operating as a business, right? It's like, I don't understand it. I've never understood why boards, leaders, nonprofit staff, like they feel like they have to operate in some alternate way. They don't have to. They shouldn't. They shouldn't, because it never leads to a positive outcome.
There was one fear you didn't mention in terms of why certain nonprofits are concerned or afraid to invest in technology, and that is the abundance of choice. And what I remember from my old psychology days in university was that concept of the paradox of choice. And the idea that was explained to me was that, let's say you've got two ice cream stores side by side. One sells 5 ice cream or 7 ice creams, flavors of ice cream, and the other sells 101. And the idea is the one that sells 7 will probably have more sales than the one that sells 101, even though there are many more choices. And it's actually because of that reason, because there are so many choices to make, that buyers all of a sudden become overwhelmed by the number of choices and end up not making a choice at all. And I'm curious to know, does that concept apply to nonprofit technology as well, from your perspective?
I think that it does. So, like I said, I've been doing this a long time, more than 30 years, and I have probably been pitched more than once by nearly every, if not every, CRM vendor in the marketplace, and many that no longer exist. It's pretty close. And so there's an overabundance of choice and, very slick marketing and claims like, oh, this is going to make your fundraising easier, faster, more creative, shinier, right? Whatever it is. And when you couple too much choice with, a fear and very often very real constraints on time, then you get kind of a, I don't want to say a deer in headlights reaction, but people I generally, as you pointed out, will make no choice and they'll just stick with what they know, even if it is not what they want or what they know that they need. A strong and supportive partner, right, can help you make a choice by sharing very clear and precise technical information. But I think more importantly, what a strong partner can do is they can give you confidence, right? They can give you the confidence that is necessary to make that choice because you know your mission, you know the vision that you have. They're able to articulate a solution to the needs that you've been talking about, but maybe haven't been able to exactly land on. And so in doing that, it allows an organization to actually not only make a choice, but to take action, right? To walk into the confidently walk through that door and say, okay, I know that this is the place for me because it is clear, it is precise. I'm not overwhelmed by a cacophony of choice and claims. I know what I'm getting, and I know it's going to be delicious.
Yeah, I agree that having an external consultant come in or a firm come in and make recommendations, have a short list, filter out all that noise, knowing the requirements, knowing their nonprofit's needs, being able to choose from all possible choices, at least narrow down the choices of all possible choices to one, two, or three, and then go through some kind of assessment with an organization to figure out which is the best one. So it's a collaborative effort as opposed to here's the one for you. But I think that kind of exercise is a wonderful one to do. And that's really one of the many value adds of going external. And on that note, I was curious to know, generally, do you have like a list of types of technologies that you recommend or have seen recommended to organizations? Like, I imagine, I would like to think at least, all nonprofits need a CRM as a fundamental starting point, plus, system A plus system B plus system C. If you could fill in those gaps of what system A, B, and C looks like, and if there's any other ones, like what would be, I guess, a fundamental tech stack is what I'm asking the question for starting a nonprofit. And then over time, is there any other ones that nonprofits should and can consider to improve their overall performance and efficiency and results?
Yeah, that's a great question. Now we have bumped up to the limits of my technologist background. From an end user perspective, though, this is what I think every nonprofit should have. They need to have a CRM, right? There needs to be a way not just to track contributions that come in, but there needs to be a way to track engagements, right? Because giving, right, from a development perspective, giving is not a linear process. We're all humans. Humans do wacky things, right? We can try to make it somewhat linear, but we have to allow things to unfold as they will unfold. A CRM that is easy to use, that has good support, that is well designed, allows you to do that, especially if you're time constrained or say you don't have a lot of staff. It allows you to do that. It allows your team, whether volunteers or staff, to do the work. I think you need to have, in today's day and age, you need to have some kind of mass communication program because a lot is done via email. People are very used to that. And it should be something that allows you to do that efficiently, maybe with templates, tagging people so that you can tailor communication, even in very simple ways. I think a social scheduler, right, social media scheduler, it makes your life a ton easier because you can do it all from one spot. a good project management tool is really important, right? Because there's multiple projects, multiple deadlines. Having something that keeps track of all of that is extremely helpful. If you're doing some kind of programmatic work, a program management tool it will be important again. So it's not just collecting data and storing that data. It's how do you track engagements? How do you see growth or change? And whatever you do, it should be set up in a way that allows you to articulate the impact that your organization is having, right? Because I mean, technology is great. I love technology as much as the next person. But from a nonprofit perspective, you need to be able to take the next step with it. And it should be something that can support your sharing what impact you're having. But yeah, those are the things that I think are really important. Those are the kinds of things that can grow with your organization over time.
Love it. Happy to hear. Yeah, I agree. I mean, CRM is really fundamental. So happy to see that in the list. I wanted to make sure people had a way of getting in touch with you if they have any questions, follow-ups, learn more about Auxilia and yourself. Where can they reach out? How can they get in touch with you?
So they can go to the Auxilia website. It's theauxilia.com. They, of course, can reach me at my email, pmorris, Morris, at theauxilia.com. If they just want to reach out generally, they can reach me at Foundry Fundraising. That is my own company, kind of the basis of everything. That's Paul at foundryfundraising.com. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn and happy to connect with people in whatever way makes the most sense for them.
Awesome. Paul, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, Alex, it has been a true pleasure. Thank you so much for this opportunity, for what you're doing with the Agents of Nonprofit podcast. This has been great fun, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for everything that you're doing as well. All right, that's it for today. I'm Alexander Lapa, and I hope you join me again in the next Agents of Nonprofit.